The Hebrew words tohu va-bohu have traditionally been translated as formless and void. They occur in the book of Genesis, describing the creation of the world. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, tohu va-bohu. And darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The words tohu va-bohu have a sing-songy quality on my ears. It's like the ancient Hebrew equivalent of splish-splash or itsy-bitsy. Linguists call word pairs like this Paranomastic or Pleonastic doublets. This means they're words that always occur together, mean pretty much the same thing, and they're playing off each other. But having such a doublet here just sounds out of place to me within the grandeur of the overall creation narrative. Now, I admit, just because these words sound out of place to me in the modern age doesn't at all mean that a native speaker of Hebrew in ancient times would have had the same reaction. Even so, I decided to explore the possibility that tohu va-bohu was not in the original text of the creation story. In this video, I will show how correcting a possible copyist error in the second verse of the Bible changes how the Bible describes creation itself. The word tohu occurs by itself in the Hebrew Bible with the meaning wasteland or vanity. The word bohu, however, only occurs 3 times, and it is only found with tohu. Bohu, then, is the rhyming tag-along that fills out the pleonastic doublet, kind of like how super is a real word that describes something good. But when you say super-duper, it becomes even stronger. Duper, like bohu, isn't a real word in its own right. I mean, you can't tell someone out of the blue, hey, you did a duper job on that project. The word bohu almost stands alone in Isaiah 34:11. The prophet describes the destruction of the land and writes, "He stretched over it the line of vanity, kav tohu, and the stones of nothingness, abnei bohu." This would be like saying he did a super job in the morning and a duper job in the afternoon. I mean, you could get away with that even in English, as long as the 2 words were still being used together. The Hebrew Bible was copied by hand for centuries. One common mistake that bleary-eyed copyists would make is either omitting letters or words or copying them twice. This is called dittography, and that's where we get our word ditto. Hebrew copyists did a remarkable job, but they made understandable human errors. One error was accidentally double copying the Hebrew letter vav. As a consonant, vav was originally pronounced as a W. It later became a V. It can also be used for the vowel O or U. Here's an example of where a doubled vav certainly happened as a copyist error. In Hosea 11:3, the Hebrew text says, "I taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in his arms, zero'otav." This text in its current form makes no sense. Translations of this verse into Greek and Latin made in ancient times were clearly looking at a different Hebrew text than the one we currently have. The ancient translations read this text as, "I took them up in my arms, zero'otai," and that makes sense. Immediately after his arms in the Hebrew text, we have the words velo and not. What happened here is that some scribe accidentally copied the vav of velo twice, and then the extra vav was later understood to go with the preceding word. In Hebrew, this turns zero'otai, my arms, into zero'otav, his arms. Back to Genesis 1:2. Here's what I'm proposing could have happened. Immediately following tohu va-bohu, we have the words "and darkness," vachoshech. The final vav of bohu could be a copyist duplicate from the following vav of vachoshech, just like we saw in Hosea. After someone accidentally added a vav there, a later copyist saw what looked like the noun bohu, and before that were the consonants that made up tohu. So that later copyist added more vavs to make some sense out of the corrupted text. If we remove all the vowels and the vavs, we are left with the consonants that correspond to English THBH, in Hebrew Tav He Beit He. Semitic language scholars would identify this word as likely coming from the triliteral root He Beit Vav. The T is a common noun prefix in Semitic languages. In Hebrew, for instance, we have Torah, teaching, and tikva, hope. Now, there are no other words in Hebrew from the root He Beit Vav. But the closely cognate Arabic language has preserved considerably more of the original Semitic vocabulary base. Frequently, rare words in Hebrew are explained by comparison to Arabic. It turns out that the Arabic root corresponding to He Beit Vav means dust. The noun hebwa means a swirl of dust, and habat means fine dust or dust particles. The phrase habat manthur means atoms scattered in all directions. And so, we can surmise that there did once exist a Hebrew noun formed from this root, perhaps vocalized as tihba. It would have meant something like a scattered swirl of dust. And I would propose that this makes a whole lot more sense than tohu vavohu, formless and void. The rest of Genesis 1 describes how God sorts out and divides the creation toward ever greater complexity and solidity. It makes more sense for him to be doing that from the starting point of a swirl of dust scattered in all directions than with a void. Science tells us that after the Big Bang, energy began converting to matter and coalesced into structures such as galaxies, stars, and planets. With the correction I propose, Genesis 1:2 may now reflect a vision of creation startlingly similar to what modern science has posited.